Oh, that's not true. I have some things down here,
Feel
but
like a
as I was watching it, I didn't really. I wasn't like taking notes as I was watching it.
mhm. It was a weird one. Like I was struggling to take notes during this one because it was
I
just so
yeah, I was just kind of like absorbing it in. This is such a bizarre movie, so I
yeah.
think to even try to say anything like I couldn't really take down detailed notes because I was also kind of just surprised at everything that was happening.
Mhm.
Like, um, it, yeah, it's really weird, and also the fact that this movie did get positive reviews, which is just the most bizarre thing to me because
Yeah.
it really. I mean, this was one of the hardest movies I had to get through. Definitely the hardest one that we've done.
Mhm.
But usually, like even movies that are bad, I can go through and enjoy. But this one was kind of bad in a way that it was like I couldn't even really make fun of it. It was just um,
No, it was like very earnest. It was just
yeah,
not
it was
like it
so
was just
earnest.
very yeah, it was kind of boring. I don't know. It was a strange
I
I don't know what I
love
was expecting, but this is a disappointment.
I love historical sci-fi stuff too, like Captain
Yeah.
America or um, Indiana Jones or any of that stuff where they go back and it's like that era and that they do some type of weird science fiction stuff. I always think that's cool.
Mm,
So I like that, but um, it just was really flat. It was really flat all around. The
yeah,
acting
man.
and um, yeah, it's just so bizarre.
Okay, so let's I guess get to it.
Okay.
All right, so sorry. Um, it's just like I don't know, like always how to begin these things. All right. Hi, welcome to Film Raiders, the podcast where we take a look at movies that have maybe been a bit overlooked, and we try to answer the question of whether or not they deserve a second chance. I'm your host, Jamie, and I'm joined as always by my friend John.
This one should have been overlooked for sure.
Yeah, we wouldn't want to bury the lead. Yeah, so this week we will be looking at Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow, a 1930s period piece about killer robots, pre-Nazi Nazi scientists, and the world of yesterday's tomorrow today. Wait, maybe? Yeah, I have no idea what this movie's about. All right, let's get into it.
Yeah. Now, as far as like what this movie, I think we could talk about like what the plot is, but as far as like what this movie is actually about, like I really don't know what it's trying to tell us at all.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like a bunch of things that happen.
Yeah, like
Um,
there wasn't a lot of like the plot was, I mean, there was a plot, but it moved in such a like one directional path and so fast that like there wasn't a lot of like wiggle room for the movie to kind of find its feet. Like it was
right.
just like one thing happened and the next thing happened and the next thing happened. All of a sudden the movie's over.
Right. There's no, and I want to challenge you on the all of a sudden it's over thing because if only,
Yeah.
I had a hard
Yeah.
time
I
with that
mean,
part of it that it wouldn't end.
yeah.
It's a movie. I think it's about an hour 40 or so.
No, it's not a
Um,
long movie, but it does feel very
yeah,
long.
it feels very long. Also, um, Angelina Jolie is in this movie for about the duration of a commercial break, and
Yeah.
it's really
And it's weird. She's top billed. Like she's like, there's only three people named: Gwyneth Paltrow, Jude Law, and Angelina Jolie. And Angelina Jolie is not in this movie. So
right. I guess
yeah,
she's really not. They have Giovanna Ribisi in this movie more. Um,
yeah,
it's I knew I was going to have a hard time talking about this one. I think because it was just really painful to watch. Also, I kind of feel bad picking it apart because of the story of the director. I don't know if you want to get into that a
yeah,
little
yeah. We'll have to get into that at some
bit.
point because it is a very sad. Well, not even. I don't know if he would look at it sad, but I'm looking at it as a guy trying really hard to make something that he really loves, and
Right.
this finished product is just so
It just
not
couldn't. It couldn't
there.
have felt further from something that was someone's like little baby. Like it didn't feel
Yeah,
like that
his
kind of
passion
movie at
project.
all. Yeah, it didn't feel like anyone was passionate about this thing. The actors, and I think this is the problem with when you have like a movie that's entirely green screen because the Star Wars prequels were like this too, where the acting would just fall so flat because I mean, I think you're asking too much of these actors when they don't have anything. Um,
Yeah, to react to
they
kind
have
of.
nothing to react to except each other. But I feel like I feel like if not everyone is psyched about acting in that scene, I don't think anything is going to come out of it because it's just so. I'm just imagining standing against a screen and you're pretending you're looking around a pillar and walking out into a hallway or whatever, whatever kind of scene
Hmm.
they're telling you you're in. So the acting falls so flat. I think maybe bigger than anything else is there's no character development whatsoever. There's nothing.
No.
All these characters are one or two dimensional. They have nothing. There's nothing really driving them at all. Like it doesn't make any sense why Gwyneth Paltrow is in the position that she is in.
No, they don't even bother setting up anything with her character. Like she's supposed to be this like scrappy journalist.
Reporter, yeah,
Yeah, but they just don't you don't see that from anything that she's in. If anything, it's one thing that I found was very weird, was that scene near the very beginning where like her editor is like telling her not to follow the story. Like he's like more concerned about her. Like it seemed like kind of like a paternal type thing. But
right.
like he's just like, yeah, don't he's like, don't like risk your life for this or whatever. Like it's funny because like usually those type of roles, like there's like kind of like pressure from the editor to like get things done or like whatever. But like in this case, he's just like actively telling her not to do her job. And
Right.
it's not really clear why.
There, there's just none of these characters have history. The only history that this movie alludes to is between Jude Law's character and Gwyneth Paltrow's character, which is, I guess, that they used to be sort of an item at one
Yeah.
point. But the chemistry couldn't be further off. They're basically like oil and water, the two of
Oh,
them.
it's bad. Like
It's so bad. I
there's
haven't
no
seen on screen non chemistry like that.
yeah,
I
it is
mean,
like
in
so
my memory.
flat. Yeah, like even they're like kind of because they have a lot of like jokey banter back and forth. But like none of it is very effective at all. Like none of it makes you feel like you're like, oh, I'm kind of like fly in the wall of this kind of budding relationship or something. It's just boring. It's just boring
Yeah,
dialogue between two boring characters.
it was really hard to stay focused and pay attention. I found, which is it was it was definitely a good shell of a movie, like a construct of a movie. You could see what they
Hmm.
were going for. I respected the type of genre piece they're making. Um, so that was there, but it's like when you think of movies that are similar to that, they work because they have like the story is richer and the characters are good, so it works. Like you look
Yeah.
at like a total genre pulp movie like Indiana Jones, even one of the ones that people don't think is that good, Temple of Doom, which I think is great still. Like you have characters in it that are quirky and it makes sense why, and like it's just sort of a I don't know, they're just developed better.
Yeah.
They're just characterized better. In this movie, there's none of that. Like Giovanni Ribisi's character is um like even him as like a side character, there's nothing to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's no
Yeah,
quirkiness to
and it's
him.
really and like things seem like they'll like use like shallow descriptors kind of for each person. Like they'll be like, oh, he's supposed to be like this engineer who's kind of like Jude Law's like buddy, but like
Right.
then like later we find out he's like this super genius engineer, but like when he's played on screen, it's like always like he's kind of like goofy and it's like a little bit for like laughs. So
Right.
you're like, wait, is this guy like a genius who's like invented all this crazy stuff? Or like I just like don't you just like never really quite sure like what the characters are supposed to be when they're being introduced. Um,
Yeah. It's
but yeah, I guess let's I mean maybe let's like get into the movie a little bit and
sure.
because yeah, it's not a complicated movie by any stretch. And I guess like a lot of things happened in it, but it's kind of just like one after another. Um, So yeah, the movie starts with Gwyneth Paltrow. She's like the scrappy reporter who I guess is like covering for some reason. And I maybe you can maybe I missed this part or something, but like she she's her story, like her big story angle, like her like the beat that she's covering is that there's like these missing scientists around the world. But like, how does she know that there's like a connection between any of the scientists that are
Exactly.
missing.
The fact that she has this connection to the science world makes no sense. I mean, the movie starts out with her, like, with her character anyway, meeting with some guy in secret in a movie theater.
Yeah.
And when you go back to that, it's like none of this. We have no idea what's led her to this. What's led her to this at all?
Yeah, or like why the scientist even wanted to tell her like what was going on, because he's like
Exactly.
super cagey, like he's very like jumpy when they meet because he's worried because he thinks that he's going to be next, like the next victim of this thing, but he like doesn't tell her any of the things that he needs to tell her for this to
Right.
have been a worthwhile gamble. Like if he's risking his life to kind of tell this reporter
Right.
this whole story and stuff, and then it backfires, that's one thing, but like he seems scared to tell her, but he's the one who approached her, like she had no idea what was going on before this.
The only
um,
thing I could think of is that she's one of only 100 people that are alive in this world, because when they attack the city, there's about 25 people. So I'm
yeah.
thinking, well, maybe just by sheer numbers, she has to be important
She is, yeah, the one reporter working for the one newspaper under the one editor in the entire city. Yeah.
with the only
Also,
one story.
it's really bizarre too. Like the whole thing is weird because so she's like covering this story as she's talking to the scientist who said that he's next on this. He's going to be the next one to disappear. The city is attacked by these giant robots, like tons of them, and
Like Iron Giant type.
yeah, they look a lot like the Iron Giant,
I
and I
like,
guess they do kind of like he bases those kind of off those like early science
yes,
fiction
which I thought was cool.
thing.
Like that.
Yeah, which is definitely, I think that part's really cool.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
but yeah, so she gets they get the city gets attacked. She like runs out. She nearly dies for pretty much no apparent reason. Also, another weird thing about this movie is that she's constantly obsessed with taking pictures, but like she's a reporter, not a photographer. So like,
Well,
why
remember,
didn't?
she's only one of 100 people, though. So
Yeah, she needs to do. I guess she has to. Yeah, she has to wear many hats.
right.
But yeah, I just like thought that was like a strange choice for the story because like, why not just make her a photographer? Like the
Right.
story would make so much more sense then. Like,
Why
she's like
not do? No, I'm totally with you, and I think this is why this movie was so difficult for me. Is like why anything is the way that it is in this movie is so frustrating, because I feel like you could, like, there's so much that you would make a sensible argument about as to why any of these things exist in the way that they do. Like
yeah,
why these characters are the way that they, or like, yeah, why is she even a reporter? Why not make her someone completely different?
yeah. It's like they chose a bunch of design aesthetics,
Yes,
but then like
that's what it is.
like they could have easily made them into more like plot oriented aesthetics, but instead they just like chose these ones arbitrarily almost and then tried to force them into this story that was already pre-built. It's
Right.
very
It's like the filmmaker had a checklist of things that he wanted to do in a type of period piece movie like this,
yeah.
like the big robots and the reporter, the sassy reporter, and all that stuff.
Yeah,
And I
and the
just feel like he's
pilot and
checking them off, but it's like they don't have any depth to them whatsoever.
yeah, it definitely going to that point, I feel like it's definitely a movie that's a victim of like trying too hard to like send out homages and kind of reference the source material. It's just like you got to let the movie stand on its own two legs a little bit,
Right.
and then you can put in some references and stuff that like film buffs are gonna catch. But like the entire movie seems like it's references that film buffs are gonna catch. So
Right.
there's no underlying plot.
Yeah, I think the problem with that is it's really thin, because instead of really building up, like, I feel like they missed an opportunity to do some world building here, because this is a unique history, though. It's not exactly anything quite like we've experienced, and I feel like it takes that for granted, because we're sort of just like thrown into it, and all of a sudden all this stuff starts happening, and the ball is just rolling. But I
Yeah,
feel like we don't get to see like what everyday life is even like in this weird version of I guess they're in New York, or
yeah, New York. Yeah.
so I feel like that was a missed opportunity
Yeah, I
as
mean the whole
well.
thing, like all of the elements seem pretty fascinating. Like all the things could
Yeah,
be really cool, but then they just they don't spend enough time on any of it. Like even the thing like they throw so the Sky Captain, Jude Law, he's like this hotshot pilot.
he's basically a
Um
superhero.
yeah, he's basically a superhero. He has like amazing gadgets, kind of like James Bond a little bit. But
Yeah,
like he he's a part of this, I guess. Like, you wouldn't know it from if you like just watched the movie, like kind of while you were on your phone. But like he's he's a part of this like mercenary legion of like soldiers. But like he's the only one who's ever flying or doing anything.
I know. No, I
Like
know. That's what I mean. When you watch
and
this
then
movie, there's 25 people in it.
yeah, and like so he's flying solo every single time, or sometimes carrying Gwyneth Paltrow around. But like he's flying solo, and he's not a part of this legion as far as I can tell. Like in terms of like any kind of military like engagement, it's always just him by
Right.
himself flying around trying to solve things. Um, and then what's weirder is that like when he lands, it looks like a military base. So like again, why doesn't the movie just make him in the military? Make them like be like some special group of like
Right.
elite soldiers who are like better than the average military person.
Yeah, I
But
was having
like
a hard time
instead,
understanding why. I mean, obviously, besides his skill set, like what was why he was so special, and like why he was the only one out there defending the city.
yeah, yeah, they like sent out a call for like Sky Captain, and
Right, which again makes me think of like yeah, like Superman or something, where they're like, you know,
mhm,
we need your help, and he like comes and flies in and saves the day, which was fine. Like,
yeah,
and they're going for this totally like idolized version, which is cool, but yeah, we don't really understand. I don't know. Yeah, I don't think we really understand his origin or like we really don't get anything about his character at all,
yeah. I don't
except that he's
think so.
annoyed with Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yeah, he doesn't like Gwyneth Paltrow, or I mean, he was betrayed by Gwyneth Paltrow. So,
Right.
uh, and then
Can we talk about that they have the worst banter in this movie? That I mean, this
yeah,
movie had all the ingredients if they were good like if they were done right to be a
mhm,
good movie. Like it could have been, you know, on par with other genre movies like that. Like it, the fact that it like knew that it had to have some type of banter, that these characters had to like bounce off each other in a fun way,
yeah,
but it just was so flat.
yeah, yep. It was again like the chemistry was just so bad. The dialogue was just boring. Like every scene, I think you mentioned to me prior to recording about how each scene only contains two people ever, and like they're always just kind of like talking back and forth, and then it's just on to another scene.
Yeah,
Um, and then even like they don't even let the characters kind of like dangle a little bit. Like everything happens so quickly. So like they're in one scene, they find some clue that takes them to the very next scene, and then they find another clue or another thing that then takes them to the very next scene. It's just like that over and over and over again until the
yeah.
end of the movie.
It's
And
just like
so
they're yeah, this thing happened, so they went here, and then this happened, so they're going here.
yeah,
Um,
like let them like kind of dangle a little bit. Like if maybe after the engineer gets kidnapped, who had located where the like mysterious signal was coming from, which that whole part made absolutely no sense, but whatever.
right,
Um, but so like after that, like they immediately find the clue that he left behind, but like
right,
let him like not find the clue for a little bit and have him like do something else to like make them kind of that's kind of helps with their character development or something.
right.
But instead, it's just like instantly. Uh, so yeah, it's that was one of the most disappointing things I think in this
Yeah,
movie.
it was very frustrating because I really enjoyed the aesthetic. So they go back to, and I actually have a hard time trying to remember where all the breadcrumbs lead to, but because it is just sort of like this thing happens and then this thing happens.
Yeah,
Um, but there's really no twists because there's really no drama in this movie.
no,
There's nothing threatening really, and they eventually get to a point like basically a Noah's Ark situation, which I was just like like scratching my head as to how they get out of
yeah,
there. Um, but maybe yeah. So they end up going back to that secret base, and I can't even really remember exactly what happens, but I do know that Jude Law and Gwyneth Paltrow end up in the plane together, which they're going somewhere, and we just kind of have more of that banter. I don't know. I was really confused as to like what each thing that they were doing was, like what the purpose of it was.
yeah, yeah. No, it was just. I mean, I've never seen a movie so willing to just kind of give their characters like the kind of direction to the next scene so explicitly. Uh,
Right.
to the point where it was boring for the audience because you're just like, okay, so I guess we're going here now. Okay, cool. Well, I guess we're going here now. Like it's just kind of one after the other.
Right.
But also, can we just talk as a side note? Can we talk about so they like break into this like lab where the scientists worked or whatever, and there's like a miniaturized elephant. Am I like was that did I see that correctly?
Wait, at what in the middle of the movie?
It was near the beginning. It was like after, when they first met up, they teamed up. They go into the room, I think, where the scientist that talked to her
Right.
had worked. It was like his lab. They like go, they break in. She like has, he's like, I think I can get up to the top window, and then she just like breaks the window. And
I don't no, I actually don't remember the time.
wow, you just blacked out during this part apparently.
Yeah,
No, but
I
they go
think
into
my
this
eyes
lab.
glazed over. Yeah.
They go in this lab, and then in the lab there's like all these like experiments that are kind of like it's like half broken machinery and stuff because the bad guys had already been there.
Right.
But they like come across like underneath this like glass jar is like a miniature. It's like a tiny elephant, like a living elephant. And then
Yeah.
Jude Law is like looking at it, and he's like, "What is this?" And then Gwyneth Paltrow is just like, "I was hoping you could tell me." And then they literally turn around and they leave. But like, if I
Right.
saw an elephant that is the size like of like a gerbil, it's like a gerbil or maybe a hamster-sized elephant, I would be like freaking out.
Yeah, you'd be concerned in some sort of way.
Yeah, which like makes me think like, what is this world that they live in? Like, is
Well,
this
yeah,
normal for them? Like, is this something that happens like pretty often? Like, this are kind of weird things. Like, you don't really know what's gonna happen.
right. You would think like by watching this that people back in the 30s never got like really overly excited or overly like frightened or anything. Like everything's very like dry.
Yeah, yeah. They're just kind of like, oh, okay. Like, it would be crazy if they were just like, wow, this is like the
Yeah, there's
strangest
no
thing
one
I've
like
ever
there needs to
seen.
be
Like, what is
someone
this? What is
providing
this?
perspective for like
Yeah,
this world versus ours. Like what? Like there's a tiny elephant. Like that's insane.
yeah. Like, if they were
There
kind
needs
of
to be
like,
someone reacting in such a way that makes it seem that way.
yeah. Instead, she's just like, I was hoping you could tell me, and then they just walk away. They
Yeah.
just leave the scene.
No, it's kind of
Um,
like yeah. It's basically my
yeah.
thoughts on the movie, where it's like you could hopefully tell me what this is because I don't know. Even when we get to once we get to the end of this thing, if you could make it all the way through this movie, just spoilers, you're not going to be. There's no payoff. There's no payoff to this
No.
movie.
Yeah, I mean, it goes. There's like a traditional, I guess. Like, I mean, in the fact that they find the thing that they were searching for, but again, there's like not that much.
No,
Um,
it ends. It's like if this movie just kept going in the way that like this thing happened, so this thing had to happen, and then it
yeah,
just ends on that.
yeah.
Because
Like,
then
and we can get to. There's like a little bit of a twist, but it's like the most baffling twist uh,
yeah.
in the world. So like, we'll get to that in a little bit, I guess.
Mhm.
But yeah. So again, Sky Captain. What is his job? Like, what is he? Like day to day when he's not like fighting giant robots, like what
Mhm.
does he do?
Right.
Because in the movie, first off, they call him and he's already flying. Like he flies this little tiny like fighter plane, but like he's already in the air when they like call him for help that these robots are attacking New York City. And then he
Mhm.
immediately like gets there and like flies, and it's just like, what is he just like patrolling? Like does he just fly around the country?
Right. And oddly enough,
Um,
because you're right, because like even bringing that up, it is inherently silly, but in funnily, like that's like something that made the most sense to me watching the movie. But now that I think about it, it's totally silly. I guess because he's like this, because he is kind of like the hero of the city or something. So he's like
Yeah, but he's a
he's out
mercenary. That's the
there,
weird. Like that's what bugs me. Is like he's like a mercenary. So like, is he? He's not like really a hero, I guess.
but
Like,
the
do they
city
pay
calls
him?
him in. Remember, they're like Sky Captain.
I know, but like, do they pay him? Is my question. Like, do they, is he? Is this like a business transaction for Sky
Wait, is he a
Captain?
gun for hire? Did I miss that?
I mean, they call him a mercenary, but like, I don't
Because
know if that just means kind of like a superhero, where he's like kind of like a rogue agent.
Yeah,
that
I
helped.
think they just wanted to add some edge to him.
Yeah, I just think that he could have been a military guy. I don't know. I think that was just overly complicated for a thing that didn't need to be,
Well, yeah,
which
because it
is
doesn't make any sense.
yeah,
There's nothing else to that alludes to that having any credence anyway. It's just like they just decided that, so that's what it is.
yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Just like most things in this movie. So
Yeah.
it's so I guess let's flash forward. They like go what I will say, the movie does jump around the world a lot and like in some kind of sometimes pretty cool locales.
Mhm.
And so they go to Tibet, I guess, and they're like they meet up with this guy who apparently knows the sky captain, and then yeah, what is the point of going to
Exactly.
Tibet?
Exactly.
I
It's going to be
mean,
so hard to really
yeah,
discuss
because
like, the importance of any
basically,
of these seeds.
yeah, basically they get to Tibet, they're like wandering, they go to this cavern, and like I don't know any of why any of that other stuff happens, but when they get into the cavern, then the like shady characters that they had been working with or whatever were apparently bad guys. They were like working for the actual bad guy, and for why I have no idea.
Nope.
But like how do they link up? I don't understand. Um, but what's crazy is that so they like go into this vault and then they get like trapped there because they were double crossed by these like people I guess they thought were like Sherpas or something, but
Right.
they're
And then
actually working for the bad guy.
there's
But then
there's
like
dynamite in there.
yeah, and there's dynamite in there. But then like they demand these vials, which again, have I did I miss something in the movie or like were these vials ever brought up before?
Jamie, I think you're giving way too much credit
because
to
because all of
man.
a sudden they're just like, where are the vials? And then Sky Captain's like, well, you're gonna have to kill us because we don't have them. And I'm just like, what vials are they talking about? Like, I don't.
Oh, you know what? Actually, I do know this thing.
Okay, okay.
Those were the two vials that the scientist guy was carrying in the beginning, and then Gwyneth Paltrow had them.
Yeah, but when did he hand it to her? To
I
her?
don't even know what's in the vials, but and yeah, oh, he dropped. No, he didn't drop them.
Yeah,
I don't know.
he dropped the schematics for the robot, but I didn't see any vials. But
I don't
maybe
know.
they're probably there. I don't know. I just it moved so quickly. Again, there was like no emphasis on these vials, so like it just moved so quickly that it was hard
Right.
to see. But then what's crazy is that Polly, the reporter, brought them with her on this ridiculous adventure. But like the when the people take them, and she's like, "I was gonna tell you, like I was gonna like tell you at some point." Which first off, why wouldn't you tell them earlier? But also like she was like, "Oh, the scientist said like these are the only thing that the bad guy, this guy named Totenkopf, uh, the only thing he needed to like complete this doomsday device." But like, why carry him with you when you're going to find him? Like, you're just
Right. Right.
like that's just.
Yeah,
I
go
mean, that's
hide
just
them somewhere in
101.
New York City, and he'll never find them.
Yeah, just like bury them in like a park or something. Like they would have no idea where these things are. They're just
Right.
two little vials.
No, it makes no sense. Screw this movie. I mean, I had such a hard time even getting through it. I, I I can't think of a movie that I disliked this much. I think this past year that I've seen.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean,
it commits so many errors, so many sins.
yeah,
Um,
it was.
well, all right,
Yeah, I mean, I
so
think
that whole thing.
the biggest sin is that it was boring. Um, like the biggest sin in movies, like if a movie goes hard to the paint and then fails, like that's like one thing. But then this movie is just kind of like so conventional that it's just like it's almost
And it
unwatchable.
like enjoys that it is like it's trying to be, and it's enjoying that that's what it's doing, and it's just like yeah, but this is not working. Like it's almost like it's winking at you, like how everything's playing out so like simple, and the way that they talk to each other, and it's just like yeah, but that's not a good thing.
Yeah,
Um, and all right, so that whole thing happens. Then there's like dynamite, and this is where like again really stupid shit happens because then they're running out, and then because Giovanni Ribisi, like I think it's him, helps them out, or no, it's this other guy,
Yeah, it's the other
Um,
guy.
the guy with like he has like a beard or something. So
Yeah,
he comes. I know that guy. He's in movies. He's in
yeah,
a lot of stuff. So he comes, helps them. Then they're like running, and then Grandpa like sort of like turns around and like jogs back, and she's like, "Wait, I have to get." Did she leave the vials in there? Is that what that was?
no, she left her bag. It was her film rolls that
Oh
she
God! All
left.
right. So then no. So then they have to run out, and that blows up. Um, so that's just another scenario where I feel like the plot, like they just had to create a mechanism of some type of action. So they just put them in an
Yeah,
arbitrary scenario where they reveal something about this group that again means nothing in the grand scheme of this movie because Sky Captain could exist on his own, basically.
yeah, yeah. I mean, she adds nothing to this thing. If anything, makes things worse in every way. And again, like if she had just been a photographer instead of a reporter, then like everything that she does would make so much more sense. Like like all they'd have to do is be like, oh, she's trying to like no one takes her seriously. She's a woman in the 1930s, like trying to be a photographer. Like it's kind of a sexist thing,
Right.
society. And so like if like she needs to prove herself, and then she's going on this big adventure, this like crazy situation where like all this crazy stuff's happening, and she's taking pictures, and she's like convinced that she's gonna win like a Pulitzer, and so
Mhm.
like that like losing her camera in that scenario would be like very important. But she's a journalist. Like she just writes the words. Like she can record what happened. Um, you would think, but she doesn't seem like she cares about that at all. But she could document from the attack on New York all the way to the very end this like insane journey that she went on.
It
But
was really hard. It was really hard too because these actors weren't given much. On any other day, I feel like this group of actors could have done so much with something, but they don't have anything to really elevate. And I've never seen Jude Law so bored. Like
yeah,
I mean, this guy's, he's a spectacular actor. Like
yeah.
he can be picky and choosy. Like the things he's in now is whatever
Yeah,
he
and I
feels
feel
like
like this
doing.
was he was like starting to kind of pick up a little bit of heat, I think, by this point. Um,
Oh,
so I don't
absolutely.
know if he was like kind of bummed that he got attached to this project, or I will say that these guys were in some sense pioneers of like what was to come with the kind of CGI digital revolution,
Right.
because this is like it's actually this movie is kind of famous in the sense that it was one of the first major like actual feature length films that was shot almost entirely in with like
Yeah.
background
The first half of 2000s was, yeah, definitely had was like a big time for that. And because you had the Spider-Man movies, you had the Lord of the Rings, you had the Star Wars prequels, you had this movie. So like those were all early 2000s, and those were all heavily
yeah, well
CGI.
this one literally, besides I guess there was one scene, the scene with the editor at the beginning, they had to go back and shoot, and they used like a real set because they didn't have enough money for the to make the CGI again. But like
Right.
they had shot the rest of the film like completely in CGI, which is pretty crazy. It's like actually a pretty amazing accomplishment. But
You know what it is? I think that was so frustrating is I knew one thing that they could have done that would have made this movie completely better, and it was if they just made this a completely animated movie, it
yeah,
actually would have been, I think, a really good cartoon. Um,
yeah,
like if they the fact that they contrived to have the live action actors to me hindered the movie because the CGI and stuff is obviously dated when you put actors in that and you try to watch it now, it doesn't look really good. But
mhm.
if you just had the entire thing animated that way, with the characters as well, to
Yeah, because
me
it
the
would have like
visual looks better and it
yeah,
kind of sells better.
it's like the early 1930s Superman movies that they made, like those famous
Right.
um, early Superman things, and like those are really cool. And like this kind of has that style, so like it would be a really cool kind of throwback to that time period.
Right. And then
Yeah,
they could make the
it was
movie for way less than they did.
yeah,
So I guess part of me is it feels bad that I'm not going to get to see that version of this movie because I think that would have helped. Yeah, just very disappointed by this movie.
yeah, I know. It's I guess we can get a little bit. I mentioned the CGI, the groundbreaking CGI, but I guess we could mention the director a little bit
Yeah.
here. So the guy's name is Kerry Conran, and he he hasn't really done much other than this movie in terms of like feature length. But
Hmm.
this movie was like his like dream project. Like he was like he had been working on this movie for like years. He grew up
Right.
loving like he was obsessed with these like early films, these like early sci-fi genre films, and uh, and so he like kind of designed this like came up with this concept for kind of a modern movie, but like a throwback to like all those films that he loved when he was a kid.
Right.
And but yeah, this guy like I mean this he was tenacious, that's for sure. Like he worked hard on this movie, like really really hard. But like he shot a teaser using like his friends as actors from his living room. Like he was in his living room. He knew nobody, and like I think he went to film school maybe. Um, but he like didn't. He wasn't in the industry or anything. He was just like living in Michigan. And while he was in Michigan, he was like filming this teaser trailer for this thing called Sky Captain, and it was like this concept for like this kind of it was going to be like a series, and there were going to be like different little adventures that this like guy like that he had developed, Sky Captain. um
Right. It's set up that way that it could have worked that way.
yeah, I know. I guess he wanted to even like late into the development, he like wanted to make it at least broken up into chapters, which kind of like makes sense because like there are points in the movie you can see are like kind of like cliffhangers almost, like if they were broken up in the middle of them kind of.
Right. Right.
But
It works as like little, yeah, little vignettes.
yeah, so he like did all of this by himself. He like designed all this thing. He shot it in black and white because that's the way he originally wanted it to be in black and white,
Hmm.
like the older movies. Um, his wife knew a producer or something, and then she saw it one time, like saw this teaser trailer that he made, and she was like, "Oh, this is actually like pretty good." And so she put him in contact with this other guy um, who then became like the financier of this film, like basically like single-handedly, because then like they didn't go to a studio, they didn't get a distribution deal, they like didn't get a studio to back it. um but then what's even crazier is that they like actually they got 60 or 70 million dollars to make it. um and then but he was worried because the movie was basically almost 100% in CGI, so he was like worried that the actors were gonna like struggle with
Mm.
like
I wonder
seeing the
why.
vision of the movie. Yeah. And so he before the movie even was ever shot, he like went back and like filmed basically the entire movie like in CGI. Uh like did the entire movie so that the actors could then like watch each scene like before they were in them and kind of like understand the movie and stuff. So he did all of that. Then he gets the actors, they like do all their scenes and everything. He had, I guess, like they talked him out of doing the chapters. They also talked him out of doing black and white. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, it cost them $70 million to make, and then the movie does like nothing. It
Right. It made 58 million worldwide. I
yeah.
I mean, I totally respect this guy and his vision, and like that part of it when you say it that way totally bleeds through. That
Hmm.
makes sense to me. Um, I just feel like someone along the way should have, because he really had something. It's just I feel like he was in the wrong medium. Like I feel like
Yeah.
this is something that would have made. I mean, as I was watching it, I got feeling like this felt like a comic book that you'd read, and then like you totally have a viable character in the Sky
Hmm.
Captain as like a hero that goes out and he can go out. Like you can have a bunch of different little missions and stories, or a show like an animated TV show. I feel
Yeah.
like this would have
Yeah.
worked so well as something like that. But
I
in
know,
this,
it's a bummer. And like clearly they wanted, I'm guessing they wanted it to be a like a franchise kind of thing because like the world of tomorrow, like the second half of the title is a reference to what the bad guy Totenkopf like what he like said he like wanted for the world or something.
right?
That was
Yeah,
like
it's
his
like
grand
Indiana
vision.
Jones and the Crystal.
Yeah, so it's kind of like Indiana Jones style.
Yeah, they totally had. I mean, that's the thing that I think is really likable about this is the conceit of it, which is, yeah, you have a character that you could build a franchise around and have, yeah, these like anthology stories, but it just wasn't the right medium, unfortunately. It would have
Yeah.
been nice if someone kind of reined him in and was like, you know what, you don't do this, do something different, because obviously he had a vision down. But yeah,
Yeah, well, it's
it's just
funny
unfortunate.
because we talk a lot. One of like our I think between the two of us, like one of our big pet peeves is when studios come in and kind of maybe ruin the vision or
Right.
overwork the vision of like a creative filmmaker. And we've like seen that in the past few years a lot. Fantastic Four is like one example people use, where like it clearly is like there's like some studio like back and forth between like the director and the studio, and there's like they don't have the same vision. But like this is an example of like the exact opposite, where you're like almost wonder if he had a few more people who maybe knew what they were doing a little bit more, um,
Mhm. Well, yeah,
that could kind of
his.
like bring a fresh pair of eyes to the project.
I
Um,
feel like the only way that these big name actors get attached to a project like this, a first time director, right, basically by all rights,
mm,
is because they have to think that he's passionate about it or something. But this guy isn't really a director. I mean, as you can see in the movie, he didn't get any performances out of these people at all.
yeah,
Um, so I do think that it's tough because I think sometimes what we have is you have visionaries over filmmakers. Like you have these people who they have a vision and they know what it's going to look like and they can do that so well. But that doesn't necessarily translate to execution on screen. And I think you see that with people like Zack Snyder, who I don't
yeah,
think anyone could argue that his movies look beautiful if you watch them with the sound turned off, because they do. But then once you start listening and you start paying attention to character and story and how that stuff develops, it falls apart because um, he just doesn't have the ability to connect a story together all like across an entire film. And I feel like that's kind of like what's happening here, which is you have a guy who really understands what influences him, what's important to him, and he spent time studying those things, and he wants to get across something in a way that's going to affect people in the same way. But it's just he's not really a director. I mean, basically from what you're saying. So he's trying to be
yeah.
like Jude Law and Angelina Jolie and Gwyneth Paltrow, and this guy is like basically what lived in his basement
Yeah,
and
and
was that.
plus, yeah, it's like, and a lot of it just seems like they gave a guy who was obsessed, like he was obsessed with these older films and like wanted to make a kind of tribute to these older films, but they just gave him way too much of a leash to do that when like he may have like they needed to kind of be like, okay, yeah, like you definitely we totally agree that there would be like a really cool thing here. Um, if like it's kind of like a throwback kind of thing, but like it has to be enough of a movie that the audience of today can connect with,
Right.
because a lot of it, like I was saying, like it seems like it succeeds on a lot of the levels I think he cares about, like he would care about, like it's shot in a way that looks very much like those older films.
Oh
um
yeah.
it's set up like the older films, or like even older like radio serials were kind of set up like there was like a lot of those vibes throughout the thing, all great, but like meanwhile the storytelling medium, it has like evolved for the last 80 years or so, so like it takes a little bit more to kind of scratch the creative itch a little bit for people, I think, and that's what you don't really get from this movie.
I think it's also yes. I think it's and you said something. You texted me earlier about like a reason why this movie failed is actually that it succeeds, and I'm thinking of it that way in the sense of this director. I think the problem
Yeah,
with this movie is to him this movie succeeded because he achieved that vision that he wanted. But the problem is it didn't succeed on the things that he should have been paying attention to more, which was character and story. I mean, yeah,
yeah,
it has plot, it has these things that happen, it has the look, it has all that stuff, the feel, the tone, um, but it just didn't have anything. It didn't have like the bones of a good movie, which is all the other things that matter, which is
yeah.
if you have good characters, if you have a compelling way to tell the story, then you can talk about anything. Um, you could make a movie about a guy who lives in his apartment. I mean, they've done that. So
Yeah.
but this movie had all the bells and whistles, but it just didn't have the bones of a strong movie.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess let's again, it's so hard to even summarize the movie because so much happens and like there's such a force between it that you're basically just like watching it on autopilot. Like your brain doesn't need to actually take in anything that's happening. Um, because it's just like it's like carrying you through the movie as fast as possible. Um, and meanwhile, like nothing's really happening like within any given scene.
But
So
you're not left to wrestle with anything.
yeah,
There's no moral like there's no moral questions here or anything like that.
yeah.
Um,
No, not at all. I mean, not at all. Like, I don't even know what to. So we should get to the end because the end is so
yeah,
bonkers.
yeah, it's
Um,
totally insane. So and they have the same dry response to it, which I think evokes in the
yeah,
viewer a type of dryness because they they end up getting to this like secret hideout. I mean, you can fix me up here if I'm getting this wrong, but
I
um,
am probably just as wrong. So
there's a whole like little bit with Angelina Jolie before we get here, but basically you see Angelina Jolie for like a little bit. She has an eye patch, and then you get to a point where the characters get to like the hideout thing at the end, or basically like they're getting closer to the end road, and they find out that the bad guy was basically it's like a Noah's Ark situation. They just see like conveyor belts of animals in cages, like by twos, going into basically like a rocket ship.
yeah,
Um, and then they just look at each other and have like such a dry response to it, and then they just move on again. And it's like,
yeah. She like
this is,
considers taking a picture. It's like played for a laugh. It's like she's like gonna take a picture and then she doesn't take a picture.
yeah,
Um,
it's just like, what, like, why even that? Why the decision for that? Um, yeah, I just wasn't sold really well.
yeah, and then like it's so. I mean, again, maybe I missed something here. Like I just didn't understand it, but like the so yeah, they find this rocket that's loading up animals on this like to be shot into space. Do they say where it's going?
Mm, I think it's supposed to go populate like another planet or a moon or something, right?
Yeah, but like what I
Where?
mean,
Yeah, I have no idea
who knows?
where it's supposed to land that it's gonna
Yeah, like
work.
it doesn't even seem like none of the people in the movie are even curious like where this rocket's going. It seems like they're just like all like, okay, yeah.
Well,
I mean, the guy was
why do
crazy.
they need to stop it either? What does it
Well,
matter?
because this is like super arbitrary, like again, needlessly arbitrary. But like as far as I can tell, like from what I can recall, they they said that the rocket was going to incinerate the planet after it blasted off. So like basically cleanse the entire planet of like because like the guy Totenkopf like hated people basically. He like blamed them for the travesties of the
Oh, was
kind
it
of.
gonna like shoot up into orbit and then like come land back down? Is that what was supposed to happen? Maybe.
I mean, maybe that's what I was thinking, maybe, but like if he's incinerating the planet, like those animals aren't going to do well. It's not like you can just like
Right.
unload them and then they're like, okay, yep, everything's fine.
What
Like we just
what
burned the
better planet
entire
are they
planet.
going to with natural resources that are better than planet Earth? Like, where are two tigers going to land that they can live?
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't know what the long-term plan was. I mean, I guess you can just say that the guy was insane.
Like,
And
then
so,
have something out there that he like terraformed something, or
yeah.
well,
Or
you know
I
what? Then
mean,
it just makes it even more ridiculous. The whole purpose of this ending makes no sense.
yeah.
Um, so they get there, and then they're like hanging on to this rocket or on the inside of it.
Well, wait, you forgot about the twist,
Wait, what was the twist?
which is that so they're like trying to hunt down this guy, Totenkopf, and then they go into his inner lair, like ready for a showdown, and like he's been dead for like ever.
Long
Like
ass
he's been
time.
dead since the end of World War One. Which is was also kind of hilarious because he must have been like if they were like in the pictures, I don't know actually. Yeah, he's pretty old in the pictures that they like show of him. So like and that was in the like early 1900s. So like in World War One or like around that time period, he was like a pretty old guy. And then like they're like going throughout this movie, not once do they ask like, maybe this guy's like dead that we're chasing because this has been like it's been like 35 years or
Well,
whatever.
who's carrying out his plan? That one robot? Is that it? Like this is what
Yeah,
doesn't
well, yeah,
work
I
with
guess
me.
everything was just like on automation, like it was all just kind of set.
Like where
Although
did he
it's
cage these live animals though?
Well, I mean, I think that he was only recently gathering them. That's the other question. It's like, why did they wait this long to like launch the rocket? He like,
This movie
it
makes no
seems
sense at all.
it's I know it doesn't. None of it makes sense. Like the twist like actually just makes the movie make less sense than it did even before. Because if it was like a crazy guy and he was still alive and he was like still working on this, and you'd be like, oh, okay, like maybe he could even explain what his like crazy plan is. But like instead, he leaves a suicide note that says "Forgive me" in 1918, and then shoots himself.
Right. So basically 20 years later.
Yeah, and then yeah, 20 years later, for some reason, then like all of a sudden these robots like come and like attack like all these different cities and like take their energy or whatever. It's like it doesn't make any sense.
Wait, so
Like it should have.
how does that tie into that the person's killing scientists off of the list?
Oh, because I guess the scientists were kidnapped. They were like working for him, so they escaped. Oh yeah, that was it. They like escaped the
Oh,
island
okay.
somehow,
All right,
and
well
then
that's kind of interesting. I can actually appreciate that. So that's kind of cool, but like it's still it's such a stretch. It's so bizarre like that was their twist that they wanted to go with, which is like, oh,
yeah,
this guy's dead. Well, okay, fine. Like we haven't seen this guy the entire movie anyway, so the fact that we go in and
I
he says
know that's the
nothing
weirdest.
is
Yeah,
like, okay, so another anti like climax basically.
yeah. It's also interesting. Like this was supposedly takes place in 1939. Um,
Mm.
but like what's weird is that like all these people are just like so clearly like basically like crazy Nazi scientists.
Right.
Like all of them are these like German scientists that are like working on this doomsday device and stuff. It's just like so bizarre because like like again, you don't know what world you're living in. Like the fact that they don't react to anything, like the fact that they think that this guy could still be alive and be like 150 years old or whatever. Maybe not that
Yeah.
old, but like a pretty old guy, and they like don't even like suspect that he's dead. And like the fact that they look at an elephant that's the size of a gerbil and have no reaction. Like I'm like, what is this world that they live in? Like, is this a normal thing? It's hard to tell.
Well,
Um,
let's get to the end here because everything what you said happens. Then they go up in this rocket because this rocket's going to fire off into space or whatever, and it has all the animals in it, and they basically foil that. Like, and that's pretty much not that exciting either. And then they end up like parachuting into water, and then they land there. And are they in like a boat or something? The two of them,
yeah, they're
the
like an
sky
old
captain
life
and
raft.
reporter. And
Yeah,
I actually missed the last thing that he says to her, but she says
he,
something to him.
it is like kind of funny. It's like kind of not funny enough to be like a good ending thing, but basically she only had one shot left and she was kept saving it, like kept saving it throughout the rest of the like for the last third of the movie. Because she like wasn't sure like what was going to be like the biggest like thing that she needed to take a picture of.
Right.
Um, and
Oh, she
so she
takes it
like
then.
yeah, well, no, but then she's about to take a picture of like all the animals like coming down in these little pods, and it's like this plant, this like rocket in the sky, like there's all this like crazy stuff, and she's like about to take the picture, and then she turns and takes a picture of Jude Law, which seems like a waste. Um, like I know that I guess that's supposed to be your character development, but it's just like, come on, like
Right, right.
that's a huge waste. But anyways, but then and then he's like. Well, because like, so then Jude Law is like, oh, you're like, wait, no, like Polly, and then she's just like, no, I know, like whatever. Like she thought like he was kind of like mad that she didn't take a picture of whatever, and then he's just like, your lens cap was on, and so she wasted the
Uh,
last shot, which doesn't even matter because it was just in his face, so it doesn't actually
wow,
matter.
that's kind of yeah, that's interesting irony for this movie itself.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I actually don't mind that. Like that's probably the only bit of character development you're going to see in this movie.
Yeah, there
Um,
were like a couple. There were a few good lines that I was like, kind of like, well, this is kind of funny. I get like I kind of thought a few of them were like good enough. Like if they were in a movie with like better, like with better chemistry or something, they would be really good lines, like kind of funny lines in a good movie. Um,
right.
but in this one, like they can't really rise above anything because you don't really feel anything for the characters. But like there was like one moment when Joe, the Sky Captain, uh,
Mhm.
like when they're about to like they're about to explode in the dynamite like vault or whatever, and then he's just like, "Could we once die without all this bickering?" But like, and I was just like, "That's kind of funny." Like that, like he's
Uh,
just like annoyed, and also that, and it is kind of funny that they just get into these like ridiculous situations
yeah,
constantly.
I think the ending would have had a little more impact too if they're just like, yeah, if these characters just had more impact overall.
Yeah,
Her turning away from like just the goings on and just to take a picture of him, I think would have like I don't know, just would have sold more. Honestly, this
yeah.
movie too made me think about another movie that I hope we do at some point, which was The Phantom, which because
Oh,
again,
yeah.
it's another pulp hero. But to me, like that movie, because it has like Billy Zane in a purple suit, like there's to me that there's like a way that that sort of pulls you through the movie. But yeah, this like it's weird that at the same time I can see that there is something that could have been really good here, but it was so boring, and I think it was the wrong medium. It was actually really painful to watch.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, I
yeah,
will say one little aside here that I will say that it was interesting about this movie is that um like it's kind of crazy actually if you think about it because it um it like has like these weird connections to other movies, like a lot of the movies that haven't even come out yet. So like I just kept noticing it throughout the movie. So here we go. The Shangri-La, the place that they go, like the Eden place that they go, during the movie, it's like almost like shot for shot Riverdale, um, from or Rivendell, I mean, from Lord of the Rings.
right,
Like
right.
there's like like these like giant vistas with like cliffs and like waterfalls and stuff. I was like, this like could just be like they could have just like used the CGI from that in this movie. Um,
Yeah,
so
because
I was
this
like,
came out
that's
like a year after the
a
last
year
one
later.
came
Yeah,
out.
I'm like, did they just like steal their IP? But yeah, so like I was like, that's weird. But then also the floating like sky ship was like essentially the ship from the Avengers and like the Captain
Oh, the
America movies.
helicarrier. Oh yeah,
Yeah, it's like almost like again, almost identical. Like even inside their little control room, it like looks very similar. Um,
yeah. It's yeah. This movie owes a lot to a lot of other fictions. I feel like.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess it's just like weird. Like it must have been, I don't know, like maybe they were both based off of something even further back or something. I don't know. But then what's even crazier is that this movie like shares so many similarities with Up, Pixar's Up, that it's like crazy because like they land or they like get to um the like final place, that like island, and
Yeah.
they like find that little like bird, that like dinosaur bird thing that's like basically exactly like Kevin from Up, the like bird that they find on that island. Plus they're chasing like a guy that was like a long dead kind of like antagonist guy, um as he's like doing something, and then like it turns out he has like all these like minions like that are defending the island for him. Like in the case of Up, it's those dogs, those like talking dogs, and then
Right.
in this movie it's the robots. But I was just like, this is like bizarre, like how similar these movies like end with each other.
That's like no, that's pretty good homework.
Yeah.
I just had a hard time watching the darn thing. It took me a few attempts because I had to watch it in like chunks.
Yeah.
But I think the part that I just sort of like dozed the most was actually the but right before Angelina Jolie shows up because I just don't remember her at all. She shows up at the end
Yeah.
in a way that she doesn't even need to be there anymore because they already saved the day. Um,
Yeah, well, it's weird. Like she shows up. I mean, again, like I wonder like what Angelina Jolie like agreed to for this project.
I wonder if
Because
she
she
got a
is
fat
only in a
paycheck.
few scenes. She's top billed, but she's only in a few scenes.
She probably got like 20 million.
Yeah. Well, as a funny aside to that, um, Carrie Conran, the director, was like I guess reporters were like asking because like the movie did not do well. It actually like lost money, like millions of dollars, and
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
he was like uh he like blamed like he was just like I like told him he's like I don't agree with the $70 million figure because like I could have made this movie in 3 million. Well, like we like hired like all these like big name actors and like it sucked up our budget or whatever. And so like he basically is like, if anything, I could have come out on top like tens of millions of dollars because I was gonna make this movie regardless. And we didn't need Angelina Jolie
Right.
in it.
See, well, now, okay. See, now that starts to make a little more sense to me because now that could mean to me two things. One is he just so much doesn't really care about character or how these parts were going to be acted at all. He just wanted his story to be told,
Yeah.
or it hurt his movie because yeah they spent because that's what I'm thinking is if this movie is made on the cheap, it could be a really good movie more in the sense of like if it's a smaller indie movie. But
Yeah.
it has that feel, but then it's like oddly bigger Hollywood. I mean, you're getting close to $100 million with this thing, which is insane. But they made it for 70 million.
I know. I heard recently, I'm gonna have to look this up, but I heard recently, I think Jurassic Park was like 90 million or maybe even less than that. And if that's the case, then that is bonkers.
Well, I do think that most of this movie was probably, yeah, it was probably actor salaries. I mean, because you
Yeah.
have to think Jude Law, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Angelina Jolie. I mean, I imagine between the three of them, that has to be like at least half of the budget at that point.
Yeah. Wow. It was Jurassic Park 63 million.
Right.
I
So
mean,
this
it
movie,
was 10 years earlier than this movie, so like it was slightly different
yeah,
times,
probably
but
for inflation, it's probably a little bit more, but still,
yeah,
like,
so like maybe 70 million, but like this movie basically they would cost the exact same amount. Um,
which is insane. Yeah.
yeah.
This movie, it's yeah. I kind of would. Out of all this, I'm the most interesting story that comes out of all this is the story of the man behind the movie,
Yeah.
which I think is the story that you found, which is what really makes this most interesting. I would want to know
I
more
know.
about him.
I would watch a documentary about this guy making this movie because it's like the most unconventional, like for $70 million. Like you would see like a movie that's like independent, like an independent film that was like a passion project from some guy who's not really a known filmmaker. That's one thing. But like this is a huge budget movie with a pretty all-star cast. Um, and then it flops not like terribly. Like it's not like the worst flop of all time, but then
Right,
he never makes another movie, like feature length movie again.
right.
This was his baby.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate because I think that he at the heart of it is really an indie filmmaker. He has that type of like it sounds like type of tenacity and spirit to him and imagination that would make him a great
Yeah.
indie filmmaker. But then it just sort of became this bloated Hollywood thing, and it sounds like he wasn't happy about that. So, I mean, who knows how that maybe that spoiled the pot. But I I don't know because just seeing this movie, I think you don't need those three actors based on how dry they are in this movie for the amount that they got paid.
Yeah, like I don't
They
think
don't deserve that. And I'm not saying it's necessarily all their fault because again, I think it must be really hard to act in that type of scenario. But
yeah.
obviously, Jude Law especially, it's almost like he's rolling his eyes on screen. Like it looks like he's
Yeah.
so bored.
Yeah.
And it's kind of almost offensive to see. So
Yeah, I mean, I will say that Giovanni Ribisi is actually he's like I feel like doing the most amount of work in
he
this
is the
movie,
redeeming thing in this movie.
but I like him in a lot of things. So,
Yeah,
um,
he's good. He's good.
but
He's the redeeming quality as far as the acting goes in this movie. But
Yeah. We should get to one last thing. So the bad guy, the villain of this movie is this guy named Dr. Totenkopf, as I've said, but he is played by Laurence Olivier, who died like 20 years before this movie came out.
Right.
And
So here's what I was really, yeah, continuing. This is what really
so
confused me.
yeah, so they got his likeness from like old what I like I guess are like BBC archive footage. They like got his like they found like different shots of him and then they placed it into this movie and then they gave him like a credit in the movie, um
Right.
which is like kind of crazy. Like I just like I mean maybe I guess I just like wonder like how like I guess you're allowed to do that. I don't know. Like it's just weird. Like if you could just like
Right. Yeah, because I was thinking about recently, like with the Star Wars, where they do like the puppeteering, like they do the uh, what do you call it, like the motion capture. To
yeah
me, the thing that they did in this movie, actually, which I didn't even notice, that actually doesn't bother me as much because it's something that was already filmed. Like I know that they did that with Marlon Brando for whatever one of the Superman
yeah
movies.
Superman yeah
So that like something like that to me doesn't bother me because that's the performance that was captured. But they do
yeah
this thing now, or I mean, as far as I know, this is a new thing, this is probably because of the motion capture now, um, where yeah, you have an actor who's dead, but then you have someone like basically motion capture as them, and then you have someone yeah, and then they have lines and they're talking. Like to me,
mhm.
that is more bizarre because you can basically because it's you're approaching like a realism, but basically someone's puppeteering them, which is
Yeah, that's it's a
really
very
bizarre
strange.
to me.
I know
Um,
it's like where does like the actor's rights kind
yeah,
of
because
come
they
in?
can't say. I mean, because people could say, oh well, their family said, but still, that's not them giving the
Yeah, like
okay
they
for this
might
to happen.
hate this project. They might hate the filmmaker. They might not want their IMDb page. Like, does their IMDb page just keep getting updated? Like,
Right.
if
And
you
the
were to,
reason I mean, after Rogue One, I mean, I saw an article that was kind of about this after Rogue One came out, but then there was this new article that came out recently that Disney's trying to get um, uh, Carrie Fisher's likeness, and it was like saying that they approached her family, and I'm thinking, still, even if her family signs off on that, because whatever Disney's going to pay them,
Mhm.
whatever huge amount of money,
Yeah,
like that's still not Carrie Fisher saying that she's okay with that.
yeah,
Like
and like they
she
can make her
can't, she
say anything. Like,
right, and she's not here to say otherwise. So I'm just not okay with it in principle at all.
yeah,
Also because even if someone was able to say it before they died, they're not able to then change their mind because they're not around to do it. So it's
yeah.
just a really weird thing to me that I
I mean, I
take issue
predict in
with.
the future it's going to be more common, and I bet more contracts are going to have things like they're going to put like a kind of a Carrie Fisher clause. I feel like in a lot of contracts where they'll be like, we have this franchise you're in. You have to sign away. Like if anything happens to you, like we're still allowed to like use you like in the future for like any other movie. Um,
See, that's a huge problem because if you're it's different if you're using something that they already acted in a property like a film
yeah,
property that they're already attached to, and if they want to reuse that, like there's already situations where actors got upset about that. Like um, I know in one of the Back to the Future movies they didn't have Crispin Glover in it because he didn't want to be in it, and they had someone who was like prosthetic and to look like
oh yeah, yeah.
he tried to sue them for that. That doesn't bother me as much
No,
as the fact
yeah,
that they're basically saying we can just you yeah like basically be that person for as long for in any film that they want to. And again, it's not like you could change your mind. Like if you didn't want to be in a movie, you could just walk out of it. You're not there to do it, so they could just do it 30 years from now. Like Carrie Fisher could be in a movie, and in 30 years mocap would be probably so good that it would be pretty seamless. And I don't know. I just think
yeah,
that's a huge ethical issue. Yeah, that you're right. We're probably going to be facing pretty soon.
yeah. I mean, it's crazy like how quickly. Like I remember it was pretty like it was like a big thing whenever in Fast and the Furious. Um, Paul Walker, when he died, like it was like a big thing. They're like, oh yeah, he's gonna like be in this movie. His like brothers have signed up to like kind of play as him, and they were gonna like digitally superimpose his face on them or whatever. But now like they're doing it with Carrie Fisher. Like it's just I feel like it's like becoming almost standard practice now.
Right.
And
I know. And the Fast and Furious, again, yeah, it's tough because I feel like they're going to come down one way or the other with this type of like what's precedence, but it does seem like different case by case. Like that situation, it seemed like everyone who knew him was like, yeah, he would have wanted this movie to be like completed, you
yeah,
know, and it
yeah,
was
and like
done.
you
It
said,
was done in
like he signed up
complete
on it.
honor
And
to him. I mean, that movie was
yeah,
basically made for him.
yeah,
So, like in that way, it was like an amazing send up. But it's like I just feel like I hate to be cynical, but the way that Disney's going to use this is a way that totally benefits them. It's not like they're going to do this complete send up to Carrie Fisher. It's
yeah.
they want to
Well, and
use
it's crazy because like
another
she's
movie.
like, I mean, I wonder like what even the benefits are. I mean, that's a whole new discussion, but like, what would you even get paid? Like, these are they going to pay Carrie Fisher's digital likeness, like her estate, like as much money as they would pay Carrie Fisher? Like, probably not. So like, they might just be like, oh, like having all these dead actors in our movie like might actually be financially beneficial because like we get to
Yeah.
like kind of be like, oh, come see Carrie Fisher in this movie because like she's dead. So like, this is
Oh,
your only opportunity to see her.
they are going to cash in because guess what? When an actor dies, when the movie comes out, they do really well, and the studio's always cashing on it. They're going to
Yeah,
do it again with episode 8. They're going to make more than they did episode 7 probably
yeah,
because guaranteed there's going to be a trailer moment with her in it that's going to make it's they know exactly what they're doing, and
yeah,
it is cashing in.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But anyway, back on Sky Captain, the
Yeah, let's
worst
go back
movie of
to
2004. This movie
yeah.
ranked 77th in box office.
Ooh.
That's more than there are weeks in the year. So that means that this movie was a complete flop. It didn't even.
Yeah, well, I read that it was supposed to premiere 1 week before Spider-Man 2,
Oh
and
God!
like, yeah, they were like, nope, not doing it, so they like moved it, like into, I don't know, some like 6 months later or something, and
Wow!
but it still didn't do much, so
Wow! Oh, Spider-Man 2 was that year, huh? That was an
yeah,
incredible. Yeah. Um. Well, I guess that's kind of mostly it for this movie, right? It doesn't
yeah.
sound like we really have much. We don't really have a whole lot of great stuff to say. I'd say
No,
overall,
I
it's
mean it's
been.
cool, I guess, for the kind of like what it looks like. There's cool effects in it. It's stylistically kind of interesting. You'll not see another movie like it. Like probably maybe forever since this guy apparently has never done a movie after this. So
Yeah.
um,
So you're basically left with a movie that has a very unique aesthetic, um, and more than anything else, the thing that's interesting here is the story behind the story, which is about this filmmaker, Kerry Conran.
yeah, yeah. Look up that guy because his Wikipedia page is crazy.
And I would say
Uh,
if that story interests you, then go watch this movie. But I feel like if you're not interested enough in movies to even be bothered with that, I feel like you're not going to want to watch this movie at all. But I feel like I would say like after watching this movie and understanding like what you've told me about this guy, it was worth it in the sense to understand like yeah, someone who's basically trying to follow his dream and sort of like how maybe it can go not the best way.
yeah.
So
Yep. That's I think there's a documentary. If there's any aspiring documentarians out there, uh do this do follow this guy because uh, I'm sure the development process for
there's
this
there
movie.
is there is so many great movies about movies, and I would love to. Yeah, I'd love to see one about this. Like they did
Yeah.
one. They did the Superman Lives one, which was awesome. I don't know if you ever saw that one, which
No,
was
I still
basically
haven't
that.
checked it out. I want to.
Um, but yeah, I don't know what our next one's going to be. We have a lot of things that we've been discussing as far as what our next movie could be.
Yeah, yeah, we have some
Um,
fun ones. Yeah, we should definitely pick up. I feel like we need like a fun one after this. to kind
We
of
need.
get us.
We might have to do.
Yeah, just so we stay awake, maybe.
This one, I thought I was gonna have more fun with this one, but yeah, this one couldn't be more the complete opposite of Swordfish, which was like completely fun and had actors that were able to like totally unleash and do what they do best. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't recommend this one overall though.
No, I wouldn't. I would say skip it for sure.
All right, well, I guess that's it for the podcast this week. We'll be back shortly with probably an in-betweener, right? We have a lot of stuff to catch up on.
Yeah, we have a halftime episode.
And then we'll reveal what movie we're doing.
Okay.
But that's it for now.
All right. Goodbye.
All right.